Huh? Excuse me? Really? You want to start a fight? Over nothing? Okay, how about you calm down a little bit, and we can figure out a way to end this. Well, it's been almost 3 years since I made that infamous video about the end him rightly technique in the Gladiatoria manuscript. And the meme is still around and it doesn't look like it's going to die anytime soon. So I have a few more things to say about it. The word rightly is apparently a mistranslation. Unfortunately, I mean, this is what the text should say. Let's face it. I mean, if you want to end him rightly, of course, that's just the right way of saying it. But no, the original text actually says something else. And at the time when I looked at this on Wiktenauer, the English translation said rightly. But now it says quickly. So the old German word used in the original text is rechtlich. And that sounds a lot like the word rechtlich, which would mean rightly. But apparently the word is more related to the modern German word rasch. I don't know if that word was in use in medieval times already. But yeah, apparently it actually means if you want to end him quickly or swiftly or anything like that. But, you know, rightly. Come on. This is how it's got to be. One of the things I poked fun at in the original video is how long it would take. You'd have to be like, oh, I'll be with you in a moment, unscrew, unscrew, unscrew. But of course, I was using a modern thread. And in historical times, the thread would be much more coarse. So it might only take 2 or 3 windings or 4, something like that. So it would be a lot quicker to unscrew that, actually. And a lot of people have been wondering, what the heck is up with this? Some have suggested that it was a joke, and a lot of other channels have talked about it as well. And it could very well be. I mean, they did have a sense of humor, obviously, in the Middle Ages, and there are a few things in manuscripts that are clearly not intended to be taken seriously, and you know, it's quite possible. It could have been either a joke or a way of making sure that, you know, people don't just copy your work and then apply your techniques and, you know, profit from that. Somebody else would either, you know, see that this is clearly a fake technique and would call them out for it, or maybe they would use that and get killed. You know, that's kind of the logic there. I'm not so sure about this part in particular. Either way, if you look at the rest of that manuscript, all the other techniques are fairly conventional, you know, compared to other medieval and Renaissance manuals on fighting and armor. So nothing particularly weird about it. And also what I find worth noting is here, it doesn't just talk about how to use this offensively, it actually talks about how to defend against it. It says here, when he throws his pommel at you, keep your buckler close to you and watch out for the throw. Hold your spear in your right hand and prepare to thrust. So that makes me wonder a little bit. You know, if it was just a joke, I mean, sure, they could have still gone the extra mile and just really try to make it seem like a legit technique. But, you know, considering that everything else is, you know, proper techniques and this is, you know, described as both offensive and defensive application. Also, there is another picture from a different manuscript which also shows this, which is interesting. I was looking that up. So this one is from a group of manuscripts called the Blume des Kampfes, which is the flower of battle. As far as I can tell, those manuals, this one and the Gladiatoria, are not related. It's not the same author. The flower of battle was written before. It says here before 1420, and the Gladiatoria was around 1430. So yeah, it's another, well, I shouldn't say mention because it's just a picture. It doesn't seem to have text, but it's clearly the same thing that the person is doing. So, and now the question is, like, why would you bother with that? A lot of people have said, why not just pick up a rock and throw it at the opponent? The thing is, the Gladiatoria covers judicial duels. So it's not a random street fight. These are people who had some kind of dispute, and in order to settle this, to figure out who's in the right, they would fight, and then supposedly God would determine the winner, and then whoever wins obviously was right. I don't remember exactly where I read this. I wasn't able to find it again, but from what I've read, the field in which they would have the duel would be prepared in advance. It would be cleared of any debris, rubble and rocks and sticks and whatever. It would be cleared out so it's level. There's nothing lying around there, so that nobody can pick up anything and throw it. And the combatants would also be searched before the duel for, concealed weapons and charms as well, because you can't have any magic in there skewing the result, because apparently if anybody uses black magic, that somehow overrides God's decision and renders him powerless to produce the outcome that he wants. Anyway, so they wouldn't be able to do that. In other words, they would usually they would throw their spear. That's pretty common. You see that in the manuals. That's typically an opener. There are plenty of techniques that describe how you would throw it, how you would defend against the throw, things like that. And so afterwards, if you still want to stay at a distance, without endangering yourself, what else can you throw? The buckler, possibly. And a few people have suggested this as well. And on many of the pictures, you do actually see the bucklers on the ground. The way they're arranged, it looks like they were simply dropped to use the spear or the sword with both hands. The one with the pommel throw, there's just one buckler on the ground. The opponent has the other one. The buckler is closer to the person who is unscrewing the pommel, so it does not look like it has been thrown. I mean, maybe the duelist wanted to keep the buckler at his feet so he can still reach it if necessary. Could be. Either way, so if you still want to cheat, quote unquote, obviously the judicial duel is set up so that you cannot cheat, technically. But this is the closest you can come to cheating, right? So if you have a sword that is assembled in such a way that you can unscrew the pommel and the sword is still functional, which can be done, either the handle could be pinned to the tang, or it could be glued, and the guard could be fitted with a tight enough opening that it has to be hammered onto it so that it doesn't move, it doesn't fall off. Not like some modern sword reproductions where if you unscrew the pommel, the entire thing comes off and it's useless. So if it was still useful, then you could spare the pommel, you could throw it at the opponent and then rush in. So the actual rightly or quickly ending is supposed to be done not with the pommel, but with either the sword or the spear as you rush in after the throw to finish the opponent off. However, there is still absolutely a way to end someone rightly with a pommel. Like this, for example. You just clobber them to hell and back. That's a good way to deal with armor. You essentially turn the sword into kind of a mace. And you can either strike with a pommel or with a guard. And there are even spiked pommels that you see occasionally in the manuals. I'm not aware of any actual spiked pommel that has been found that is in any museum. But the manuscripts show it sometimes. So that's a thing. A few people have actually tried this out. Thane's Rant, for example, did a test with the pommel throw against the helmet, and it was, it can't knock you out or anything, but it is unpleasant. It's kind of jarring. Sudden impact on the helmet is surprising, and it also tends to be really loud inside of the helmet. And there was another video by a HEMA group. They also tried it, and they found that it is quite disorienting and unpleasant, and, it can shock you for a moment, stun you. So that seems to be the idea. So you just throw something at them out of the blue, unexpected, and it hits them and it rattles their helmet. It's just kind of, what the hell just happened? And you're supposed to follow up really quickly and charge in and attack them. And that makes certain sense. And to give you an idea of what it might be like, I took my GoPro camera, put it on a dummy, and went through this. So there's a bit of a role play in the beginning, and see if you can find, if you can notice anything, if I'm doing anything fishy. Oh. Excuse me. Really? You want to start a fight over nothing? How about you calm down a little bit, and then we can figure out how to end this. Right. You may or may not have noticed it. My guess, probably not. I was actually subtly twisting the pommel. As I move around, I was kind of hooking the pommel against my body and just turning. So I would twist the pommel a little bit and, just kind of trying to mask it with other movements. So I was actually unscrewing the pommel a little bit. Now, I had already loosened it in advance just because this thread has so many windings and it just would take too long. But if it is something that doesn't take as many rotations, you could very well do that. And in this case, since it was already loosened, I was actually hiding it with my hand, so you couldn't see that the pommel was already loose. And then you can very much just grab it, throw it, and follow up with a cut like that. And it's not necessarily that easy to see, and it's definitely not expected. And if you hit somebody in the face, this could also be used unarmored, of course. If you actually throw this into someone's face, that could be very painful. Maybe you could even give them a concussion, depending on how large the pommel is. This kind of pommel here, for example, is really solid and heavy. Not all of them were this heavy and some were hollow. But if you have a really massive pommel, I would not want to have this thrown in my naked face. This would seriously hurt, and this would most certainly stun you for a moment. So, it could work potentially. Now, as said, it might be a joke. It might be, whatever, but I could actually see it work, possibly. It's not completely ludicrous and outrageous. I do see some point to it.